The morning had begun like any other at the bustling airport. Passengers hurried through terminals, flight attendants checked their schedules, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and jet fuel. Among them, Angel 1, her call sign whispered among crew and passengers alike, was preparing for a flight that would soon be remembered forever. She was an ordinary woman to most eyes, clad in the crisp uniform of a flight attendant, her hair neatly tied back, and a smile ready to greet anyone boarding her aircraft. Yet beneath her composed exterior lay a quiet determination, a resolve forged through years of experience, and an unshakable sense of duty. As passengers lined up to board, she performed her usual checks, verifying that every emergency exit was accessible, ensuring the first aid kits and fire extinguishers were in place, and confirming that every crew member was aware of their stations. She glanced at the flight manifest, noting the names, ages, and special needs of the 183 passengers under her watch. Each name represented a life she might one day be called to protect. Though she would never admit it aloud, she felt a deep connection with them, a silent vow to keep them safe at all costs. The plane itself looked ordinary enough, a standard commercial aircraft with polished seats and the familiar hum of engines idling on the tarmac. But as the last passengers took their seats, Angel 1 could feel a subtle shift in the air, a tension almost imperceptible to anyone else. Perhaps it was intuition, honed over countless flights, that warned her today would be different. She moved down the aisle with practiced ease, assisting an elderly man with his luggage, guiding a young child to his seat, and offering kind words to nervous flyers. To them she was simply courteous and professional, but to herself, each action was preparation, each step a rehearsal for something far graver. Takeoff was smooth. The plane accelerated down the runway and lifted gracefully into the sky. Angel 1 demonstrated the safety procedures with her usual calm authority, her voice firm yet comforting. Passengers watched her intently, some sleepy, others anxious, as she moved from row to row, ensuring that every seatbelt was fastened and every tray table upright. The engines roared steadily, a comforting rhythm that seemed to promise a routine flight. For the first hour, everything seemed normal. Drinks were served, passengers reclined in their seats, and the cabin lights cast a warm glow on faces oblivious to what lay ahead. Angel 1 moved efficiently, quietly checking for signs of discomfort, fear, or need. A mother whispered to her child, a businessman dozed off with his laptop on his lap, and an elderly couple held hands tightly, seeking comfort from each other. Angel 1 offered quiet smiles and nods, small gestures that reassured the passengers without drawing attention to her own thoughts. Then it happened. Without warning, a subtle smell of smoke began to drift through the cabin. It was faint at first, almost negligible, but Angel 1 noticed it immediately. Her senses sharpened, instincts kicking in. She quickly moved to investigate, tracing the scent to the rear cargo hold. The smoke was thicker there, curling upward like sinister fingers reaching into the cabin. Panic had not yet set in, but she knew the moment it did, it could spread faster than fire itself. She alerted the crew, her voice calm but urgent. They followed her instructions without hesitation, knowing from years of training that these moments demanded precision and decisiveness. Angel 1 grabbed a fire extinguisher, her hand steady despite the sudden adrenaline surge. Every thought was focused, every movement deliberate. The passengers were still unaware, still clinging to normalcy, but she knew that normalcy had just become impossible. As the minutes passed, the smoke grew thicker, and the acrid smell of burning materials filled the cabin. Angel 1 moved quickly, instructing passengers to keep calm, guiding crew members in emergency procedures, and preparing for the worst. Somewhere deep inside, she felt a mix of fear and resolve. The fear that lives were at risk, and the resolve that she would do everything in her power to save them. She returned to the rear of the plane, where the fire had started to flare. Flames licked the cargo walls, heat radiating outward, threatening to engulf everything in moments. Angel 1 did not hesitate. She used the extinguisher with practiced precision, battling the growing inferno while directing crew members to move passengers toward the front. Her mind worked like a machine, calculating, prioritizing, and acting with flawless timing. Passengers began to notice the smell and the smoke, their curiosity turning to fear. Some cried out, others froze in panic, and some clung desperately to each other. Angel One's voice cut through the mounting chaos, clear, commanding, and reassuring. "Stay calm. Follow instructions. We are going to get through this together." Her words were more than instructions. They were a lifeline, anchoring the frightened minds of everyone aboard. By now, the fire had begun to spread along the cabin walls, consuming paneling and igniting small pieces of debris. Heat pressed against her face and smoke stung her eyes, but she pressed on. Every passenger she could see, every crew member at her side, was a life in her hands. She had to act swiftly, decisively, and without hesitation. Failure was not an option, not today, not ever. In that moment, Angel One became more than a flight attendant. She became a protector, a guardian, a force of courage against an unfolding disaster. And though no one could have known at that time, the action she would take in the next few minutes would define her legacy, saving 183 lives and creating a story of heroism that would inspire countless others. The smell of smoke thickened, filling every corner of the cabin with its acrid, choking presence. Panic began to ripple through the passengers as they caught sight of the thin curls of smoke climbing toward the ceiling. Some tried to remain calm, hands clutching armrests, eyes darting nervously toward the windows. Others began murmuring frantic prayers, their voices trembling, their bodies tense with fear. But Angel One refused to let the panic spread. She moved quickly and decisively, her voice slicing through the growing chaos. "Everyone, stay calm. Keep your seatbelts fastened and follow instructions," she commanded, projecting authority and courage. Her tone was sharp, yet imbued with empathy, like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. She moved swiftly, checking passengers one by one, ensuring that they were safely secured, guiding those who panicked to focus on her instructions. A young child clutched his mother tightly, crying uncontrollably. Angel One knelt beside them, placing a firm, reassuring hand on the child's shoulder. "It's going to be okay," she said calmly. "We are going to get through this together." Behind her, crew members scrambled to follow emergency procedures, but the smoke was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. The flames in the cargo hold had grown, licking up the side panels and igniting loose materials. Sparks flew across the aisle, striking seats and igniting small fires on upholstery. Heat radiated throughout the cabin, suffocating and oppressive, forcing passengers to cough, tear up, and struggle to breathe. Angel One's eyes burned from the smoke, but she ignored the discomfort, focusing solely on the lives around her. She directed crew members to grab fire extinguishers and began battling the spreading flames herself. Each burst of foam from the extinguisher was precise, targeted, and deliberate, aimed at both containing the fire and buying precious time. Her mind moved faster than her body, calculating which rows were most at risk, which passengers needed immediate assistance, and how to keep the panic contained. The stakes were enormous. Hesitation could cost lives. As she fought to control the blaze, she heard screams erupt from further back in the cabin. A panicked passenger had overturned his seat, and a nearby elderly man struggled to move past him. Angel One sprinted to the scene, her boots pounding the aisle, and pulled the man to safety, helping him back into his seat and securing his seatbelt. Her presence was calm and commanding, a stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded her. The plane jolted violently, caught in turbulence that seemed almost synchronized with the fire's fury. Passengers cried out in fear as luggage tumbled from overhead bins, hitting seats and the floor with loud crashes. Oxygen masks dropped, dangling uselessly as some passengers struggled to reach them. Angel One moved methodically, assisting passengers with the masks, ensuring each one was properly positioned and helping those too weak or terrified to manage on their own. Her actions inspired those around her. Crew members began to work with renewed energy. Passengers tried to stay calm, and a fragile sense of order began to emerge amidst the chaos. But the fire continued to rage and the heat was relentless. Angel One's hands were blistered from handling hot metal, and her uniform was singed in several places. Sweat and soot coated her skin, but she pushed through, knowing that her endurance was the difference between life and death. In the midst of the turmoil, a young woman fainted, her body collapsing across the aisle. Angel 1 dropped to her knees beside her, lifting her carefully and guiding her to an empty row of seats. She instructed other passengers to assist, forming a human chain to move the injured to safer areas. Every movement was precise, orchestrated with the precision of someone who had trained for emergencies but had never faced one of this scale. As minutes stretched into what felt like hours, Angel 1's courage never wavered. Her mind remained clear, focusing on one objective: save as many lives as possible. She was aware of the danger surrounding her, the fire spreading, the heat intensifying, the smoke thickening, but she refused to let fear dictate her actions. Each passenger she helped, each decision she made, was a thread holding together the fragile fabric of survival. Finally, she saw a small glimmer of hope. Crew members had managed to contain some of the smaller fires, slowing the inferno's spread. She continued to guide passengers forward, row by row, ensuring that everyone was breathing, safe, and ready for the eventual emergency landing that would soon come. Even as exhaustion clawed at her body, her determination never faltered. By the time the cabin had stabilized enough to allow for movement toward exits, Angel 1 had become more than a flight attendant. She was the heartbeat of the flight, the force holding the plane together through fire, fear, and chaos. Every action she had taken, every command she had given had saved lives, though she had yet to know exactly how many. And though the passengers may have seen only a calm, composed professional guiding them to safety, she knew the truth. She had faced death itself, stared it in the eye, and refused to yield. In that moment, the stage was set for the next challenge, the emergency landing. The plane was still airborne, but the fire, the smoke, and the damaged systems meant that every remaining second in the air required vigilance, courage, and unflinching resolve. Angel 1 took a deep breath, steadying herself for the next phase, aware that the lives of 183 people rested on her shoulders, and that nothing she had done so far would have mattered if she failed in the coming moments. The cabin was now a raging furnace, thick smoke curling toward the ceiling and flames devouring panels with terrifying speed. The heat pressed against every passenger and crew member like an invisible hand, relentless and unforgiving. Angel 1's face glistened with sweat and soot, but her eyes remained sharp, scanning for danger, calculating every move. Every second was critical. Every action could mean the difference between life and death for the 183 souls aboard. Sparks erupted from a side panel, igniting a row of seats, sending passengers screaming in panic. Angel 1 grabbed a fire extinguisher and moved with precise efficiency, her hand steady despite blistering heat. She doused the flames in calculated bursts, then pivoted to guide a group of terrified passengers toward the aisle. Her voice rang out over the chaos, a commanding anchor in the storm of fear. "Keep moving forward. Stay calm, follow my instructions." Some passengers froze, paralyzed by fear, clutching at each other or their belongings. She rushed to them, kneeling to meet their eyes and speaking with firm reassurance. "You can do this. Step by step, we are together, and we will survive." Her words were more than encouragement. They were a lifeline, a tether anchoring their frayed nerves. Slowly, she led them forward, her hands steadying trembling arms, her presence radiating authority amidst terror. A sudden jolt threw the plane sideways, tossing passengers and luggage across the aisle. Oxygen masks dangled, but some passengers struggled to pull them down. Angel 1 lunged, helping a young mother secure her mask over herself and her baby. A man stumbled, his foot caught under a seat, and she yanked him upright with a force born of desperation and determination. The cabin was chaos incarnate, screams, smoke, sparks, and the roar of the engines. But she moved with precision, never faltering, never losing focus. Crew members fought valiantly alongside her, but it was clear the situation was worsening. The fire had spread, reaching overhead compartments and igniting curtains near emergency exits. Heat waves distorted the cabin, and the acrid smoke burned lungs and eyes. Angel 1 ignored the pain in her chest, the stinging of her eyes, the sweat dripping from her brow. Her mind was singularly focused. Save every life possible. A faint moan caught her attention. Turning quickly, she saw an elderly man trapped under debris from a collapsed seat. Without hesitation, she lifted the heavy obstruction, guiding him back to the aisle. Another crew member extended a hand, and together they moved him toward relative safety. Every movement was calculated, every decision instantaneous. There was no room for hesitation. Each second lost could mean another life lost. Lightning flashed outside the windows, illuminating the terror within the cabin in brief, horrifying bursts. Outside, rain pounded the fuselage, streaking the windows with sheets of water, making the aircraft feel like a fragile vessel caught in the jaws of a storm. Yet inside, Angel One's calm authority never wavered. She moved from row to row, assisting passengers, securing seatbelts, and extinguishing small fires that threatened to spiral out of control. Time had lost meaning. Minutes stretched into eternity as the inferno threatened to consume everything. Passengers clung to her words, her instructions, and even her physical presence as a guiding force. She had become more than an air hostess. She was a beacon of hope, a guardian, the thin line between life and death. Every passenger she guided, every flame she fought, every fearful soul she reassured was a testament to her courage and determination. Suddenly, a large jolt rocked the plane violently, knocking several passengers to the floor. The ceiling panels groaned under the stress of the fire, and embers rained down from above. Angel One sprang into action, her body moving before her mind could even register the danger. She lifted a young man trapped beneath debris, shouted instructions to nearby passengers to help each other, and continued forward, never stopping, never faltering. Her lungs burned. Her vision blurred from smoke and sweat, but she pushed on. The fire was relentless, but so was she. Every time she put out a flame, she moved immediately to the next danger. Every second she saved, she preserved life. Every passenger she guided closer to the exits was a victory won in the face of near-impossible odds. Finally, through sheer will and skill, Angel One managed to create a corridor of relative safety down the aisle. Flames roared around her, smoke thickened, but passengers now had a clear path toward the emergency exits at the front of the plane. Her voice rose over the din, commanding and unwavering. "This way! Follow me! Keep moving! You are safe if you stay with me!" Even in this near-apocalyptic chaos, hope began to flicker. Crew members joined in her efforts with renewed vigor, and passengers, inspired by her unwavering determination, pushed forward. Step by step, the aisle became a lifeline, a narrow corridor of salvation. And at the heart of it all was Angel One, courage incarnate, a living testament to human resilience and heroism. By the time the first group of passengers reached the front, the plane's interior was a scene of devastation, scorched panels, singed seats, thick smoke, and the remnants of panic scattered like debris. But every passenger alive had made it this far because of her. Exhaustion threatened to claim her, her body aching and lungs burning, yet she pressed on, fully aware that her job was far from over. The fire was still a threat, the plane still airborne, and the emergency landing was imminent. But Angel One had already saved countless lives, and with every ounce of courage left, she was determined to see all 183 passengers through the inferno to safety. The roar of the engines was deafening, yet over it all, Angel One's voice remained steady, cutting through smoke, flames, and panic like a beacon. The plane had endured hours of chaos, but the emergency landing was now the final critical challenge. Every passenger still aboard depended on her, and despite the exhaustion burning through her body, she refused to falter. The cabin was a scene of controlled chaos. Flames still licked the walls and overhead compartments, smoke curled thick and black through the aisles, and heat radiated with relentless intensity. Yet in the middle of this inferno, passengers were moving forward, one by one, under Angel One's unwavering guidance. She had become more than an air hostess. She was a guardian, a force of courage and hope that anchored every terrified soul to survival. Crew members worked tirelessly at her side, moving debris, helping passengers with minor injuries, and preparing everyone for the landing. She paused only briefly to catch her breath, scanning the rows to ensure no one had been left behind. Her uniform was torn and scorched, her skin marked by soot and burns, and her body screamed in protest at every step, yet her resolve remained unbroken. "Stay in your seats. Brace for impact!" The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Angel One's heart clenched. The plane shuddered violently as it descended through turbulent skies, yet her voice rang out, guiding passengers to follow protocol and keep their heads down. "Hold on, protect your children! Cover your faces!" She moved along the aisle, helping those who struggled to maintain position, calming the faint and encouraging the terrified. A young boy clung to his mother, eyes wide with fear. Angel One knelt beside them, her hands steadying the mother's arms as she adjusted the child's seatbelt. "We're almost there," she whispered, her voice calm but commanding, a lifeline of reassurance in the midst of pandemonium. The child buried his face against his mother's shoulder, comforted by her presence and by the unwavering courage radiating from Angel One. The plane's descent was rougher than anyone had anticipated. Metal groaned under the strain, and sparks flew from panels near the engines. Some passengers shrieked in fear. Others clutched at armrests with white-knuckled determination. But Angel One moved tirelessly, guiding everyone with firm instructions, her own fear swallowed by necessity. Every command she gave was precise, every motion deliberate, designed to maximize survival. Time stretched painfully as the runway approached. Outside, smoke from the fire intertwined with the storm clouds, creating a surreal tableau of danger and drama. Inside, every passenger relied on Angel One's authority, her presence an anchor amidst chaos. Her hands were raw from gripping rails and supporting passengers, but she pressed on, aware that the final moments were the most crucial. Finally, the plane touched down. The landing was rough, tires screeching, fuselage shaking. But under Angel One's guidance, passengers maintained their brace positions, protecting themselves and each other. Emergency lights flashed, illuminating terrified yet alive faces. The inferno that had threatened to engulf the cabin now seemed distant, yet the danger was not entirely gone. Heat still radiated, smoke lingered, and the plane's engines groaned under the strain of survival. "Keep your masks on. Follow instructions." Angel One's voice rang out again, ensuring that every passenger remained calm and oriented as the plane slowed to a halt. Crew members moved quickly, opening emergency doors and preparing the slides. One by one, passengers descended, aided by Angel One and the team, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. Some cried, some hugged loved ones, and all looked at her with a gratitude that words could scarcely convey. Despite her own fatigue, she helped the last few passengers exit, guiding them carefully down the slides, ensuring that no one stumbled or panicked. Every life mattered, and she refused to leave anyone behind. When the final passenger reached the tarmac, she allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, her body trembling with exhaustion, her lungs burning from smoke and adrenaline. Yet her eyes shone with quiet triumph. Emergency personnel swarmed the aircraft, extinguishing the remaining flames and assisting passengers further. Angel One stepped aside, watching as the survivors, 183 in total, were accounted for. Every life she had protected, every decision she had made under unimaginable stress, had culminated in this moment of triumph. She felt the weight of it all settle in her chest, not just the exhaustion, but the profound satisfaction of having faced death and chaos and emerged victorious. Later, in interviews and official reports, she would humbly downplay her heroism. But the black box, ever faithful, had recorded everything. Her commands, her reassurances, her calm in the midst of the inferno. Those recordings would tell the story of a woman who saved 183 lives in a burning plane, whose courage and professionalism were nothing short of extraordinary. Angel One had become more than a flight attendant. She was a legend, an angel of survival. As passengers embraced one another, sharing tears and laughter in relief, Angel One finally allowed herself to sit. Her body aching, her mind heavy but proud. She had stared into the heart of fire and chaos, guided hundreds to safety, and emerged as a beacon of courage. The seeds of kindness she had sown, through calm words, steady hands, and unwavering presence, had grown into life itself, touching every soul aboard. And though the memory of smoke, flames, and terror would never fully leave her, neither would the knowledge that her bravery had made a difference. She had faced the impossible, saved countless lives, and reminded the world that in moments of unimaginable peril, one determined person could indeed change everything.